Welcome to the Money Made Human podcast. It celebrates at its heart the work of credit unions and their vital role in enriching our lives and communities. Brought to you by First Class Credit Union, each episode features insightful discussions revealing the meaningful impact that can be made through economic collaboration. Mostly, it's a collection of compassionate conversations about navigating life and the individual journeys we take. Welcome to Money Made Human, a podcast by First Class Credit Union. We are delighted today to be joined by a Scotland football legend, Alan Rough. Alan, what a pleasure to meet you today and have you on our podcast. You're really an icon of Scottish football.
Well, I think it's because I've been a long time. I started playing when I was 16, and
Is that right?
and obviously coming through all the teams and everything. I was fortunate enough to get 20 good years playing. A lot of footballers don't get that long, but I think when you're a goalkeeper, you try and stay away from injuries, so you seem to last longer.
And you do look so well and healthy, and what a privilege for us to have you today. Have so many questions.
Yes.
Want to talk to you about, obviously, it's coming up for the World Cup, and you were a part of, I think, 2 World Cups, is that right?
I played in 2 World Cups, but I was actually I was at 3. I went to Mexico in '86.
As well.
I never played in Mexico, but I've actually taken part in 3 World Cups.
Amazing. Want to talk to you about your journey to football. We're really lucky to be business partners with the Professional Footballers Association in Scotland, and I want to talk to you a bit about money in football and money in footballers and perceptions we might have, and just talk to you about how you spend your time now around football, if that's okay.
Yeah, fire away.
So a key thing from our concept of Money Made Human is to go back to the past and talk about where we've come from. Are you local to Glasgow?
Yeah, I was brought up in I was born in the Gorbals. I was brought up in Maryhill, which is only a stone's throw from Partick Thistle, which was quite ironic. Stayed in Doncaster Street and grew up there. You know, obviously supporting Partick Thistle. I used to go up to Partick Thistle when I was 10 and skip in at half time and collect the ginger bottles and all that, all the usual stuff. And my upkeeping was in that area, and then I obviously moved to Knightswood. It was the old style. We're going to decant you to the country, so we ended up in Knightswood. So I was there for a wee while, but no, quite football had been a big part of my life.
And local to the area. And what about, who brought you up, Alan? Was it
Mum and Dad? Yeah, Mum and Dad. They say we started off in the Gorbals, and then we moved to Maryhill, I think, when I was 5 or something like that. I remember my dad being very active away back then. You know, it was just a tenement flat we stayed in. You know, I only remember 2 rooms. I do remember getting the bathed at night in the sink. I remember that, so it wasn't a luxury accommodation. But I do remember my dad working very hard, you know.
What did he do?
He actually was a miner to start off with,
Okay.
and then obviously moved out of the mining, and then he became a security guard for a long time. But my memory of him was he was always doing other jobs to make life a lot. You know, he would be, you know, he'd work in a picture hall, or he'd work here, or he'd be doing lots of other things. So yeah, we were well looked after as kids.
And was he a Partick Thistle fan?
He became a Partick Thistle fan, obviously, when I started playing for Partick Thistle, and I don't think he missed a game. You know, he used to come to every game, whether it was home or away, he'd be there. I'd always leave tickets for him. And then obviously when I went on to play for Scotland, he came to every Scotland game.
Oh, I love
and,
that.
He had lots of tickets as well. Quite a good story. It was one time with Scotland, we were playing Holland at Hampden. In the old Hampden, there was a wee window as you went in, and you left your complimentary tickets at the door for whoever you were inviting.
Sure.
And I left my 2 tickets for my dad, and I was in the dressing room getting changed for the game, and there was a chap at the door. Jock Steen was the manager, and there was a chap at the door to say, your dad can't find his tickets. So it was nothing much I could do about it because I was getting ready for the game. And Jock Stein said to the boy, well, tell him to look a wee bit harder. And then about 10 minutes later, there was another chap at the door, and here was my dad. He'd actually come right into the dressing room. And Jock Stein said to him, look, will you go and get your daddy's tickets? No, he told me he'd go and get them, so because he was obviously knew my dad couldn't get in without the tickets. So no, my dad would walk in anywhere. And
I love that.
I'm sure everybody's dad, anywhere you went, we used to go on holiday to like Girvan or Saltcoats or something like that. He was one of these guys that you'd be walking down the road and everybody knew him. I know, you get, how you doing, Bob? How you doing? It was baffling though how many people they actually knew.
I love that. And so how did you get into football as a young boy?
Oh, just football at school. I started off at school, and because I was a goalkeeper, it's the old goalkeeping story. When you come out at playtime, everybody wants to play football, and the two best players get picking the team. Mm-hmm. So you have a big lineup of everybody knows the good players, so the captains pick the best players, and the guy at the end who's absolutely hopeless always gets thrown in goals, and that's how I started. I couldn't play outfield, I was just hopeless, and I used to get thrown in the goals, and it was a protest early on, but then I just got used to it.
And did you, what happened in terms of becoming a goalkeeper? Did you get into it? Did it become something you loved?
No, it was just for school, and then I got into it, I liked it, and then I got picked for the school team, and then obviously went to the BB, and I played for the BB team, and then just carried on, moving up the ranks and playing as much football, because modern day kids don't realise that football was everything. You would play football in the street till it got dark. You would play football and use anything, a door as a goal, or any two jackets thrown down. You would just play football. It was all the time. That doesn't happen now. The story I always tell a lot of the younger kids now is we had pitches over at Govan, and they were called the 50 pitches, which means there was 50 pitches. Mm-hmm. And these 50 pitches were full every morning and a Saturday and every night. There is only 2 pitches there now. Now that just shows you that kids aren't playing as much football as what we did, and that's why so many aren't coming through as quick as what they used to be, and a lot of the good players in my era all went down to England. They all had played with big top English teams. The English teams always needed a Scots player in their team, and it doesn't happen as much now as what it did then.
And what happened while you were getting into football? Was your mum and dad looking at you going, what are you going to do for a job, Alan? Yeah. What were they trying to steer you to?
Yeah, at school, they were always saying you have to obviously get some kind of O-level or higher level. Unfortunately, I wasn't bright enough to get that level. I was woodwork and metalwork. That was my skills. And I knew I wasn't going to be successful at school because the class I had, the class that I was in, they sat me at a desk and with big windows, and they sat me looking at the football pitches. So all I did all day was stare at the football. But I was always thinking about when's PE. And way back then, PE was, maybe 12 PE classes a week, which was great. You just took your football boots with you and you knew you were getting PE in the morning or PE in the afternoon. But as the years went on, that obviously got curtailed to about 4 or 5 or something like that. And I left school. I think I left school in 3rd year, and that's when we moved to Maryhill when I went to Garrioch School. Never quite made North Kelvin side, I was thrown into Garrioch, but football for me was everything. I'd made up my mind that...
Is that what you wanted to do?
I wanted to be, but obviously, as you said, my dad there, no, you have to have a trade. Everybody has to have a trade. Mm-hmm. So I went as an electrician. I was an apprentice electrician for Scots. And I did all the multi-storey flats and that, but I was the only apprentice that never worked overtime, because I always wanted to go to training, and I would leave and I would say, no, I've got something else on or something like that. So I was fortunate enough till I was 15, 16 to really get into the under-16 teams and with Partick Thistle, and it was just a progression from there.
And was there a moment when your dad realised, actually, you've got a chance of doing this at a high level?
Yeah, I think you have to take... I think I did 2 years as an apprentice electrician, and then I went full time with Thistle when I was 17. So it was be all or end all. You know, I definitely didn't want to be an electrician. You know, I wanted to be a football player, and fortunately enough, when I never looked back after that. I never had a trade, to tell you the truth. I mean, I don't even think my family asked me to change a bulb or a plug, because they're not taking the chance that I blow the place up. So,
can you remember, was there a moment where you came home to your mum and dad and said, I'm going to sign for Partick Thistle? And was there pride in that for them?
yeah, I mean, that happened in mysterious circumstances because, as I said, I think I was only 16 at that time, and I played in the afternoon with a local youth team. And the manager of that youth team ran a man's team. And this Saturday, their goalkeeper, for whatever reason, couldn't play. And the boy asked my dad, would you mind if Alan played for the man's team? Now, you're talking 21, 22-year-olds. So I played that day, and it was down at Bartley at Anniesland. And I think we won, and I must have had a good game. And this guy came up to my dad and said, look, I'm Jimmy Dickey. I'm a scout for Partick Thistle, and would like your son to come up and have a trial on Tuesday night. So my dad was front of it. Once my dad got a hold of that, I was going to be a football player, then he was right behind me. So that's how it started. Very lucky, because that scout could have been at another game. It just so happened that day he was at that game that I played in.
The chance of that happening.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's one of these moments that swinging doors, you know, that he could have, the game that he went to watch was cancelled, and that game was the nearest game to that park.
Does a lot of that happen now? Scouts just by chance seeing someone, or is it much more difficult now?
I think it's much more difficult now, because I said earlier there, I think there's not as many kids playing now, because, and I don't know, when scouts still go to games, you know, and generally if you go to a game, there's somebody stands out more than anybody else, you know, so you're taking a chance of taking them along, because there's kids now going to professional football teams at 12 years of age, and you hear of players, young kids being at Celtic and Rangers when they were 12, and then they get to 18 and they don't make it. You know, that's a tough one you've got to deal with. But as I said, when we played, we used to play on a Sunday, it would be 20 a side. And it would just be
every man for themselves.
Yeah, it'd be incredible, you know. But you could always look at the teams and say, well, he's got a chance. And fortunately for my area, the Knightswood, Drumchapel area, there was quite a lot of players broke through. A
lot of talent coming from there. And how did it progress to playing for Scotland?
I just come through the ranks, you know. I played. After I got into the Thistle first team, I got picked for the Scotland under-18 team. And then the progression from the under-18 team was to the under-23 team. I played in the Scotland under-23 team and then progressed to the full squad. But that was in 76. So, it took a wee while to get there. But and playing with Partick Thistle, which wasn't a big club, you know, it wasn't seen to be a lot of players came for teams like Partick Thistle.
Well, I was going to ask that. Was that unusual to have a Scotland goalie
from a smaller
team?
Yeah, it was at that particular time, because before, most of the goalkeepers had either played for Rangers or Celtic or somewhere down in England. And so, yeah, it was a big kick, you know, being picked for Partick Thistle. And I always remember when we used to play like Scotland-England games on the television, would come up, you know, the names of the players and who they played with.
Sure.
And I used to have a giggle, because it would be Kenny Dalglish, Liverpool, Graham Souness, Liverpool, Alan Hansen, Liverpool, and Rangers and Celtic, and then at the top it would say Alan Rough, Partick Thistle.
The mighty Jags.
The mighty Jags that, you know, had hit it. But no, it was great, and we had a great bunch of boys as well.
It just going back to your family for a second, do you remember telling them you got a Scotland call-up? Was that important to them?
Yeah, my first Scotland cap was against Switzerland at Hampden. So my dad was pleased as punch, as I said. My dad used to go to the games with Gordon McQueen's dad, and they were a sight. You know, they were just typical supporters, and they'd be standing outside with their tartan tammies and their tartan scarves.
I love that.
And they might love it, but it was embarrassing at the time, you know, when you saw them.
When you're trying to be
cool. Yeah, exactly. And they're outside, you know, just being supporters.
And then what about your journey? Because we're coming up to World Cup season. Your journey to playing in the World Cups. You were saying you were part of 3 World Cups, so that would have been in Argentina and Spain.
And Mexico.
I'd like to talk to you about the Argentina one in particular. I'm a 70s baby. Now, I would only have been a toddler when the Argentina World Cup was going on. But I remember my mum and dad telling me the whole country got carried away. They thought we were going to win. And I remember my mum saying to me these words. She said to me, "Ali MacLeod got us believing we were going to win the World Cup." What was that like? Is that true? And what was it like to be a part of that?
Yeah, I think you've hit it exactly on the head. I think Alan MacLeod was a great enthusiast. You know, he lifted the whole nation. He believed, he got the nation believing that we could do particularly well. I think the players were a wee bit more realistic, you know, because it's a big ask going over to South America, you know, and performing in the heat and playing and all that. So we knew we had a good team. But it was incredible, and it was funny enough you mentioned that there, because the scenes are like 20-odd thousand being in the park before we left.
This was in Glasgow?
In Glasgow. This was just the night before we left. They all came to say cheerio, and then leaving to Prestwick Airport, all the streets were all lined in flags, and it was absolutely incredible. When I actually got to Prestwick to go on the plane, my wife and my son were there, and I never even had a chance to say cheerio to them, because it was
You're
absolutely
just kind of swept away.
And it's just moving on then, because somebody sent me a video the other day of this Scotland team leaving.
Yep.
And there was like just 20 or 30 school kids with flags.
I know.
And the team just walked on the plane and flew away.
Well, I was going to ask you about Argentina. Okay, so maybe we did get carried away. But was there fun and joy in that as well?
No, there's no enjoyment. The football itself, if you're winning, it's fantastic. If you're not winning, then it's horrendous. It's a horrible... Because you feel as if you've let everybody down. You've let the nation down, all these people that were there to see us, and particularly in the first game when we got beat by Peru. I mean, everybody was in a downer. It was a horrible, horrible time.
But there was a famous game as part of that where we played Holland.
Yeah, the last game, but unfortunately it was too late.
It was too late. But what happened at that game with Holland?
Holland was just one of these games where we knew we had to perform, and we knew what we had to get, and we had a really, really good side. The first 2 games we just didn't perform, which happens in football. There's lots of games where you're expected to win something and you don't, but the Holland game was justification of how good we were, because that team got to the final and we beat them quite comfortably.
And then what was it like returning from Argentina after that immense send-off? Was it difficult?
Not very good. Difficult? I remember as the plane was flying into the airport, I remember looking out the window and there was about 200 or 300 people on the tarmac. And I think Alan MacLeod thought they were there to congratulate us and say, well done, but it was the exact opposite. It was like a mob. It was a mob who had been let down and were really angry about what had happened in that, and it was a horrible experience.
Oh no, is that right?
Yeah, it was terrible. Absolutely terrible.
How do you recover from that?
Well, you're a footballer. You've got to take the highs and the lows. You've got to put it to the background, and there's other games coming up, and you've got to just perform.
And then you went to Spain in 1982, is that right? What was your memories of that one? That
was better. I mean, Argentina wasn't very well organised. The accommodation we stayed in was poor. The transport was poor. The training was poor. The training surfaces were poor. Once we got to Spain, I think the SFA and everybody had learned from the mistakes. So Spain was better. We stayed in a lovely complex in Sota Grande. Jock Steen was the manager. He was very thorough in everything that we did. Very well organised. Training was good. Facilities were good. The food was good, obviously, because we were in Europe. So from that aspect, everything was good.
You feel there was a better setup?
Yeah, much, much, much better setup. More relaxed, not so much, because I don't think you realise when you go away abroad, to places like South America, there's reporters there. There's sports reporters and there's news reporters. Sports reporters report on the sport. News reporters are sent over there to get stories.
Scandal.
So, not particularly scandal, but if you're a reporter and you've been sent away over there and your editor's saying, like, we want stories, if you don't file back stories, then you're not going to be in a job. So it got a wee bit nasty in Argentina. That wasn't the case in Spain. Spain, everybody was pushing in the right direction, and the only downside of that was we were drawn against Brazil, which was a bit of a bummer.
Which we have coming up in this World Cup.
We certainly have.
What are you thinking for this World Cup coming up? How do you think we'll do?
Well, this one, the Brazil that we played, was unbelievable. In '82, I don't know how that
Would that have had Pelé in it, or was he too
No,
old?
he was in his 70s. He's way back then. But they had good players. They had the Zicos, the Falcaos, Juninho, Zico. They just great player. They should have won the World Cup that year. So Jock Stein had us completely focused on winning your first game. Forget about the Brazil game. If you win it, fair enough. If you don't worry about it. The last game will be the important one, and unfortunately we got beaten goal difference. So that was a bit of a downer in that one. But we played particularly. But by this time, we had players in our team who'd won a European Cup. Of course. Big players. So we knew we had a good side. We just couldn't win that last game.
And what do you think for now for the team? Our squad.
I think he's got a good squad of players together. There's no doubt about it. Our midfield is as good as it's ever been. Mm-hmm. We haven't found that striker yet that's going to win us the games. Lon Shankland, seems to be the striker just now. Goalkeeping's a wee bit worried. Craig Gordon, I think, is the number one and should play in the games, but he hasn't had a lot of games under his belt this year. But I think he's professional enough to deal with it. He played at the weekend there. I think he'll play again in the next game, and he'll start as our number one. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult because people don't realise that although the football's got a lot to do with it, the climate's got a lot to do with it as well. I mean, we're not used to playing in that kind of heat, and most of the African countries, the South Americans will be used to play it, and there's going to be water breaks, and that'll show you how warm it's going to be.
And when you're watching football, do you have an eye on the goalie? Do you have a special view of that?
No, not particularly. I like to see the goalkeepers doing well. I always like to see the goalkeeper being the star man. Yeah. And Craig Gordon has done that when he's played, and the others have as well. But you don't want your goalkeeper to be the star man, because if the goalkeeper's the star man, means you're getting...
There's pressure points elsewhere.
Going the other way. You want to be going that way. You want the striker to be the star man or the midfield player. So I think the boys are going over there quite hopeful. I think we've got to win the first game. Winning your first game is always important. And then obviously the Moroccan game, they got the final of the Africans Cup, so they must be a good side.
One to watch.
Brazil don't seem to be the Brazil of old. I think they finished 5th in their South American group. They have big name players, there's no doubt about that, but not as many as what they used to be. So let's hope that they're not as good as what they are.
We'll get your predictions at the very end. But just coming back to football and footballers, we're a credit union. I guess to describe that would be like a community bank. Mm-hmm. We serve most of the UK, and we're really fortunate to be able to serve the members of the Professional Footballers Association. But we're very keen to say to footballers, especially young footballers, save a little bit.
Yeah.
Don't go for the £500 trainers or whatever it is. Just save a little and save often. And there's also this perception that all footballers, no matter where you play your football, are wealthy, which is not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
What would your feedback be for young players starting out in terms of money and wealth and looking after that?
Yeah, I think you've hit it on the head. I was fortunate enough to get 20 years professional footballer. Not a lot of money, but the modern day players are getting more money, the younger ones in particular. And you're right in what you're saying. You should save as much as you can, because you never know what's round the corner. You never know whether you're going to get 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or whatever. Not everybody's on 10 grand a week.
No.
So I think later on in life, I think you've got to look forward to that. In my era, there was no pensions. I think you should get really involved. If your club's got a pension, you should really get into that, and look to the future. I remember when I was 30, I was at Hibs at the time, and I was at a wee training session, and John Collins, who went on to play for Celtic and a lot of big clubs.
Of course.
And he was only about 17 or 18. I remember him saying to me when I was 30, he says, what are you going to do when you finish? And I never thought of that. I never even thought that I was ever going to stop playing football. Never looked to the future, never banked anything, never looked to what I was going to do. So I think the younger players now, I'd like to think the clubs and the people like yourself are helping advise these kids.
Yeah.
And they've got somebody at particular clubs, whether it's Rangers, Celtic, Hibs, Aberdeen, somebody's advising them that you don't need, to have a big flashy car. You don't need to have... I saw a story down in England. There was an Arsenal player, a young player. Yeah, I think he was about 18 or 19, and he hadn't even played for the first team. And they had to go round to his house and take away a Maserati, a Lamborghini and a Porsche. And that just shows you the money that they're on, and nobody's advising them. Nobody's giving them any knowledge of what's going to happen later in life. Because I would say if you're lucky enough you start playing 17, if you get to 35, that's only half your life. You've still got half of your life to go. And if you've got nothing prepared, okay, you might have earned a lot of money, but there's not a lot of players just now earn a lot of money, so they're the ones who have to look after themselves.
And unfortunately, we've seen stories in the press where footballers are kind of targeted as well for scams and, kind of tax avoidance schemes and so on that makes them vulnerable in their own way.
Yeah, it's who's advising you.
Yeah.
An advisor would say, there's something happening in Dubai, you need to put money in there, or there's a housing thing here. There are some football players who are actively buying property, but they're using their money and they're looking ahead. The property obviously is going to make them money, but it's for the players, I know the ones that you're talking about, who are not on that kind of money. They're the ones that have to be aware that there is a big future out there.
Yeah, save little, save often. That's our message to them. Now tell me, Alan, you mentioned some of the players that you played with. Who stands out? Were you a fan as well as a colleague at any time?
No, once I got playing for Scotland, obviously I got to play with Kenny Dalglish and Graham Souness and Danny McGrain and Sandy Jardine. They were all with big clubs
all
at that time, but they were all pals, I think things have moved on now. There's a lot of, I'm not having a go at foreign players, but there's a lot of foreign intake into clubs, which wasn't there when we were there. So I don't think the unity is there the way we were, because when I was at Hibs, the majority of the players were all from Edinburgh. So they all knew like the history of the club and who had been there and everything. I think some of the clubs have lacked that a wee bit, not all of them. But when Robertson went to Aberdeen, he said the first thing he noticed was there wasn't a unity in the dressing room. There wasn't like a pals all fighting for each other. So I think he's going to change that.
And was there a manager that you played for that you look back and go, he was amazing?
Well, Jock Stein obviously jumps out. Later on in my career, I think Dave McParland with Partick Thistle, who brought us all up as young boys and got us to a League Cup final. He will always be remembered. But I think Jock Stein, for me, sticks out a mile more than anybody else.
As a Hamiltonian, can I say I'm grateful that you said that, because Jock was brought up in and around Burnbank in Hamilton.
That's right, yeah. So it's amazing the amount of players who come
from that
area.
No, amazing. What about navigating life after football, after playing football? Is that tricky?
Well, I was very, very fortunate. I finished playing when I was 40. And
that's quite old.
Well, I was a goalkeeper, so you're not picking up injuries and you're not out for any length of time. And I was very fortunate that a friend of mine called Jay Crawford was the CEO of a radio station, and this radio station were just away. This was about 1990. We started doing a sports programme, like a phone in, and he asked me if I would like to have a bash at it, and fortunately, I did take a bash at it, and I've been doing it ever since. And I've been lucky that avenue is there. I was there when I was 40, but as I've moved on, I'm now with Peter with PLZ, and I'm just continuing what we were doing.
And does that give you pleasure that you're still involved? You might not be playing, but you're still involved in the community.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Obviously the the real radio one was a football phone-in, which you could communicating with the supporters, and that was
Is that tricky?
That's hysterical, absolutely hysterical. Because some of the callers, you never know,
What
you
you're
never
gonna
know
get.
what's going to get. But that was funny for a time. But obviously with Peter now, we're out of grounds and we're interviewing football players. We're not doing the phone-in stuff, so it's still a continuation of enjoying yourself and doing something that you've done all your life.
Love that. And actually, I hope you don't mind me saying this, Alan, but you told us before we went on air, you're in your 70s.
Yeah.
But you look so well, so healthy. What's the secret to that?
I think you've got to keep active, and I think being on the radio and doing the shows, not particularly the radio, but doing it, and you're active, you're talking all the time, and you're meeting people, and you're doing things like this or doing other things, and people still want you to do things. But I think being active, and I think physical act. I mean, I know a lot of people. I hate walking. I hope I don't mind me saying that.
No.
I hate walking. I play tennis and I play golf and I play bowls.
Do you do them well? Do you too?
Yeah, I would like to think so.
You
That
do well.
in fact, I'm that well that in the bowls, for the people who play bowls, it's the bowls competition time just now.
Okay.
And unfortunately, in one of the rounds, I get drawn against my wife. And so I had to play her in one of the rounds, and I think she then found out how competitive I really am. And everybody was saying, "You're going to let her win? Are you going to let her win?" I went, "No." So that's your competitive. I mean, my kids hate playing me at anything.
You're still
table
competitive.
tennis, tiddlywinks, Ludo, anything.
Anything.
You know, when you're brought up as a footballer, you want to win. You don't want to be a loser.
What would I don't know if you still have your mum and dad?
No, I don't, no.
What would they say about your life looking back at it?
My dad would just be, I mean, I think he still is, you know, I think he watches all the Scotland games with his tartan army and his scarf and all that on, but no, he was right behind me from the start and pushing, I remember like, pushing quite hard actually, you know. I mean, he used to ask me where I'd be playing, and I'd tell him somewhere else because I knew
he would
be the dad. He's standing at the side of the park shouting and bawling and everything. But no, him. My mum wasn't in the football side. She was, obviously I keep saying way back then. She was looking after the family and looking after what we were eating and just really maintaining
she was the
house.
Caregiver.
Yeah, she was. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, when my dad died, she was left herself. So I think we all became a bit closer. I don't know why, but we did. And then unfortunately she passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah. Now we've got some final questions for you from our team. A quick fire question and answer round. So I've no idea what these entail. I love this first one. What was your most memorable experience while playing for Scotland in the World Cups?
Just being there, being good enough to be the number one and on the plane, you know, and enjoying every minute of it.
I love this question. Who was the trickiest striker to go up against as a goalkeeper back in the day?
In Scotland, it would have been Joe Harper, Aberdeen centre forward, who always had a knack. If you didn't catch the ball properly, he'd be waiting to put it in the back of the net. Davy Cooper at Rangers.
Hamiltonian.
Yes, I know.
Love that. What's something people would be surprised to learn about you? Age.
Football? Age? Oh, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know. Football-wise, could kick the ball with my right foot. So I'd be hopeless. I'd be hopeless at the back pass rule just now. I'd probably fall on my face, so I tried to kick the ball with my right foot.
Your favourite team to ever play for and why?
It's got to be Partick Thistle. You know, I was young enough at 18 to win the League Cup, and that was the start of my career, so that'll always be number one in my memories.
In one word, what does football mean to you?
Winning.
Love that. And this is an interesting question just about what you were talking about. How has sports broadcasting evolved since you've been involved in it?
I think the worst thing of the lot is the way, I keep saying away back. When I played, I would say up until 70s, up until the 90s, from the news, the sports reporters and the players, there was a unity there. You could sit with a reporter and have a chat, or he could phone you, at the house. How you doing, Alan? Doing this wee story, blah blah blah. Sure. That doesn't happen anymore. There is no contact with the modern day player.
It all goes through the club. You
have to go through PR. You cannot phone anybody up. You cannot speak to them without permission. Yep. I think that's a big miss now. I mean, I know why they do it, but that is a thing I feel is lacking now, that there seems to be a divide between the players and the reporters. And there seems to be an anger of, if somebody writes a story about you, that was him that wrote that story.
There's almost some suspicion there.
Yeah, something like that. I don't think there's a unity there. I don't think there's... Trust is the word.
Trust, sure.
I think the reporters that I used to be with, like Ian Archer and Hugh Taylor and these guys, you would quite happily speak to them because you knew they weren't going to shaft you. If they were phoning you about a story, the story would be okay, but I think that happened. Because but media has moved on now. I mean, everything, you just have to look at the front of a newspaper and it's all something not particularly good.
Yeah. I've got 3 last questions for you. One is, last Saturday, it was the Champions League final, Arsenal and Paris. Yep. And it ended up in penalties. What's the pressure like for the goalkeeper in that moment? Or is the pressure on the striker? How does that... What's the dynamic of that?
Well, first of all, the striker's got a free hit at goal.
Okay.
He knows where he's putting it. He knows exactly
before he puts the ball down.
He knows where he's putting it. The goalkeeper has to guess. And used to could go a wee bit early, trying to guess. If you go a wee bit early and guess, you could get it. But now they've stopped that. You can't move. So everything's stacked towards the striker. But people don't realise the pressure the striker's on. He could be the greatest player in the world, but pressure is everything. Pressure in any moment in time is you have to deal with, and it doesn't necessarily work all the time, as it did with the Arsenal player who missed that. So he's got to live with that.
Will he live with that?
Yeah, he's a professional football player. He has to move on. Yeah, I was watching a documentary on the television last night about Gareth Southgate.
Oh, yes.
And a lot of the England failures were all penalty kicks. And there was a young boy who got thrown in, I think it was 2 years ago, boy Saka.
For Arsenal as well,
He was only 19 and he missed a penalty. But you're saying, how do you react to that? He's still there now. He's in the England team in the World Cup. So you have a mentality of, you just got to put it aside and just believe in your ability.
After that kind of game, does that make you wake up during the night and go...
No, you don't sleep. Oh, no, you don't sleep.
You just relive that?
You just sleep. You feel as if you've let everybody down as an individual. If it was a team thing, you might be able to deal with it a wee bit more, but as an individual, he'll have to have people round about him, his family, his pals, and that's the only thing that can get you over it.
What about the World Cup coming up? What's your prediction for Scotland? Will we get through the next phase, into the next phase, because we've never done it, and who will win the World Cup? Yeah,
I think we will get through because the rules have changed now that the third best team in your group can possibly qualify, which makes it a lot easier to qualify, and that's why I'm saying if we win our first game, we've got a great chance of even getting through in 3 points, believe it or not. And who'll win it, I think it'll be, for the first time in a long time, an African team or somebody from South America. But I always like Spain. I think Spain have got... They watch the Barcelonas, the Real Madrids. They've got the big players who perform at these big occasions.
And will you be there watching it like your dad with...
I certainly
dressed in Tartan Army? You wouldn't have a hat?
I might have a Scotland strip on.
A Scotland top.
I will be right behind the team.
One last question. I think it's been really inspirational to speak to you.
Good.
Not about the football as such, but your view of life and keeping healthy and keeping active, and you look fab. You need to tell your wife that. We gave you that feedback. What would your best life advice be to anyone listening to this?
I think you touched on it earlier, the financial side of it, being a football player. Look to the future. Prepare yourself for the future. Prepare yourself for not being a big star football team, a player. And money is all. You know, I think pensions, I think when you get to 60 and you realise, you know, what you've got to live for in your last 20 years or 30 years of your life, I think it's very important that you are secure, particularly family as well, you know. But I think the financial side, for me, having not made a lot of money out of the game, you know, is something, and looking back on it, I should have been better prepared.
Or better advised.
Yeah, better advised.
Better advised. It's been such a pleasure to speak to you, Alan. I feel like I've met one of the icons in and around my childhood as well, and one of the Alan MacLeod's famous army of 1978. Everyone, Alan Rough.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Money Made Human podcast. We're grateful to spend time with you and hope you enjoyed it. If you want to join a credit union, choose us. With love, until the next time, First Class Credit Union.